Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's roundtable organized for the initiative known as Proposals for Novel Ways of Being. My name is Lucas, and I work in the curatorial programs team at National Gallery, Singapore. The four speakers today are some of the program partners of the Novel Ways initiative, and we will be hoping to get their thoughts on the impacts of the pandemic on art and on Singapore. And now that we're approaching the end of 2020, also what they think art, culture, and history can, should, has been doing, or might want to do in response. Before I introduce the speakers, I'll just say a few words about Novel Ways. Proposals for Novel Ways of Being is an initiative co-developed by National Gallery Singapore and the Singapore Art Museum, who are joined by 10 other local art institutions, art spaces, and artist collectives to create a series of exhibitions and programs specifically in response to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Singapore and its art ecosystem. By creating platforms for curatorial and artistic projects, which ran from August of this year to February 2021, Novel Ways aims to work in solidarity to rally or otherwise concentrate the efforts of the Singapore art community so that all our audiences have something to look forward to as we come out of circuit breaker and its varied stages. A key aim for the initiative was to be able to provide some support for artists and other cultural workers in terms of remuneration for participation, space, and organizational and other less tangible support. And of last count, the initiative involves more than 170 cultural workers, not counting the sort of multiplier or trickle-down effects of video editors, your photographers, art movers, programmers, etc. Institutions like the Gallery, SAM, National Museum, for example, were asked to go a bit further and to engage external curators to work on their projects, rather than look in-house. The title, Proposals for Novel Ways of Being, deliberately references the name of the virus causing COVID-19. For us, it is a reminder that this is, in a sense, just a new virus and a new crisis. There will be other viruses, there will be other crises. So it is, in a way, a recognition that this is both unprecedented an event, but also not. And perhaps there are lessons to be drawn from the past and lessons to be drawn from this crisis for the future. Importantly, the initiative demonstrates a belief in the essentialness of art and artists and their role in reflecting the conditions and anxieties of our time, as well as to imagine and propose ways to rethink our relationship to the structures of the world order, be these economic or sociopolitical, to nature, to the natural world, and to one another. So please go to novelwaysofbeing.sg to find out more about the many exhibitions and programs. It's really compelling stuff. So, without further ado, I now invite our speakers to turn on their cameras and microphones. We have today Jun Yap, Director of Curatorial, Collections and Programs of the Singapore Art Museum. We have Seelan Pallay, Director of Coda Culture, who is joining us only on audio. Yes. We have Woon Tian Wei, Co-Artistic Director of the Substation. We have Fairuz Iman Ismail, Curator in the Curatorial and Collections Department of the National Museum, Singapore. Hi, everyone. Give a wave. Say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So thank you so much to our speakers for making time today for what is the first of 3 roundtable discussions featuring the program partners of Novel Ways. The other program partners will speak in future sessions. So now onto the roundtable proper. This is not a show and tell where everybody presents their PowerPoint decks and whatnot. Rather, I will just pose a few questions to our speakers about their respective Novel Ways projects and take it from there. So they are highly encouraged to also ask questions of one another, interrupt if they have to. There's also some time for questions and answers also. So please do send in your questions to the comment section on Facebook below. And to start, I think I'll start with Tian.
Okay.
The Substation was the first program partner to open a Novel Ways project with a pop-up store for Straits Records in early August. The pop-up is actually just one in a series of activities that you're doing as part of a multi-part project called We Are Not Going Back, We Are Coming Around. Could you tell us a little bit about this project and how it responds to the concerns of Novel Ways?
Are you talking about the overall project or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that I think one of the starting point is that I feel that the pandemic kind of review a kind of broken world, right? And I think in this idea of the brokenness of the world, I was interested in how I think there was a few discussions prior to this, but I mean I'm interested in the idea of salvaging something that is broken. So maybe if we think about things like if the chair is broken, we'll try to fix it and repair and salvage it. And at the moment that if we think a chair cannot be fixed, then we throw the chair away. So I think for me, it's kind of really about our instinct to repair something that's broken. So I mean, when there's a life, so I mean, broken as in maybe metaphorically, this idea that other things are also broken, or maybe they're already broken before the pandemic, but then it sort of shows. So I do so maybe even if we think about what's really broken, things like our train system can be broken, right? So like we still remember that trains used to be constantly breaking down. Political systems can be broken down, are breaking down, right? But I mean, one thing that's really obvious here, I think, in the pandemic is also the financial system seems to be breaking down. So under the COVID lockdown measures, we are sensing that. But at the same time, we know other things about the financial system that is already broken because it's also breaking down our planet, right? So I feel that part of the idea of what we were trying to do with Novel Ways of Being was to really highlight these different projects or endeavors that different cultural workers are working on, and maybe propose new ways of thinking of how do we rush in to repair a world that's broken, right? We shouldn't come back to business as usual, but maybe we should really try to think about something else that's possible in the world.
Okay.
I think.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, I have to interrupt because I'm hearing that there's something wrong with the stream. We might need to pause for a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Give us just 1 second, please, while we sort this out.
Now the stream is broken.
Yes, seems like it. And we will repair it. We will repair it.
Yeah. Are you going to repair it the same way?
Yeah.
You know?
Very timely. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not pre-planned.
Not prepared at all. But you know, yeah.
Sure.
That is the pandemic. Yeah, I mean it's something lah. Something. Yeah.
I will also check whether we have to start all the way from the beginning.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you're right. No, it's still broken.
Oh no, so we're not streaming right now. I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. I think then you all will restart the stream lah.
Looks like we'll have to. Yeah, but 1 second, I'll see what Shen and Jillian say.
Oh, we're live again.
Oh, we're live again?
And we're live.
Hey, no way. Oh, are we live?
Yes, I think we are. Okay. To anyone who's watching, sorry about that. We had some technical error, and so we had to restart the stream. I hope you haven't given up on us. You're still with us. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. So we have a roundtable with some participants from the Novel Ways of Being initiative. Earlier on already introduced. I'm not sure if I should go over it again, but maybe I will just introduce our speakers again and have them wave and say hello. We have Jun Yap, Director of Curatorial Collections and Programs at the Singapore Art Museum. We have Seelan Palay, Director of Coda Culture, who's joining us on audio. Say hi, Seelan. Are you with us? Okay, yeah, I think we hear you. And we have Wen Tianwei, Co-Artistic Director of the Substation.
Hello.
And Fairuz Iman Ismail, Curator in the Curatorial and Collections Department of National Museum Singapore. So thank you all for being here. We will continue with the roundtable, I think. So sorry, Tian, can I ask you again, to say a bit about your about Substation's program for Novel Ways. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Okay. So basically, the program that we put together kind of is a response to the pandemic. So one of the ideas that we were really thinking about was that the pandemic kind of reveals a kind of broken world, and as we are kind of, I think in Singapore we're kind of recovering, or we think we're recovering, right? And there's a rush to kind of repair the things that seem broken about the world that has been disrupted by the pandemic. And I think I just wanted to sort of like focus on this idea of what I mean by repairing and salvaging, and salvaging, and maybe this idea and this instinct to salvage something that is broken. So for example, if we think of a chair that is broken, we try to salvage it, so we can find a way to repair this. But if it becomes beyond repair, we have to throw it away. So maybe maybe if we were to quote Marie Kondo on this, right? That Marie Kondo always asks us if you ask us, when do we decide the lifespan of the objects in our lives? If the thing in question still gives you joy, then there is this idea that you want to keep it, right? And I think that there is a certain subjectivity that comes with this instinct to the broken. And I think that's what where I'm really interested in all these artistic endeavors that's coming under the Substation's response to the novel ways of being, is that is how we respond to the broken. Not that the project itself are responding to the brokenness of what's coming with the COVID, but to kind of remind us that maybe it's the instinct that we need to develop towards the broken. So I think, in a way, we need to sort of not give up on the broken planet that we are inheriting because of all the resources that's being extracted from the planet, and then maybe also to renew a kind of promise to salvage what is broken. What is worth saving and what is worth coming back to, I think, or coming around to. I think that's what I wanted to sort of think about in the programs.
Thank you. I think that's really quite poetic. Are there particular projects as part of we're not going around, we're not going back, we're coming around that for you does that more?
I think maybe one of the earlier projects that we launched first was actually inviting Straits Records as a pop-up store. So Straits Records, just for the context, has been operating for 25 years. And they actually, I think what's really interesting was that they actually stopped operating a physical space. And this is like a hiatus of about a year and a half that they've been not operating, and them coming back to open a pop-up store, I think kind of reminds us how easy, that we forget when something is not around, that, hey, actually there's so many things that they've been doing, and what kind of happens when we lose that. And I think one of the most difficulty that we have for projects like Straits Records is the very high rental rates that a lot of the small initiatives have to try to sustain themselves. But I think that it's gotten also to a very, very difficult moment. And maybe it's also time to sort of rethink, is this the only way that we should think about our spaces, I guess, in that way.
Right. Yeah. And I think in times of the pandemic, as the title of the initiative also suggests, we always want to think about like new ways of doing things, how to do things better, but it's also trying to decide what to keep, what to bring back, and what to discard. Yeah.
But I do think that there's a really great effort to actually get all the different art groups together to sort of put something together at this point of time. I do think that we do need the art. The art could actually maybe help mitigate some of this kind of stuff that we're feeling with the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the aims of the initiative, so it's great that you think it's doing part of that at least.
Yeah, and then it's great to have coded culture, software starts, and just a different kind of art space. I think that's very important for us.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask, this is the 30th anniversary for Substation, so it would have been nice to have had a big party, but of course we can't do that with the pandemic restrictions. But do you? What did you do for the 30th anniversary? And I guess how did the substation reflect on this anniversary, and how might that influence how it's going to go forward?
Right. Yeah, I do think that everything about the pandemic and of course the circuit breaker was very disruptive. Maybe the running joke is that, maybe it's not a running joke, it's true. It's actually what's happening with the pandemic is also placemaking on a very large scale, on a global scale. I think that a lot of the guidelines that we are given to kind of doesn't allow us to, I think, challenges the way that we should go about being social in the art world, in the rest of the world. So I think that's one of the major things. So like you said, unfortunately, then we can't have a big birthday bash. But
Yeah.
I think we started off the year with an invitation to anyone or everyone who has had, which substation has touched their lives in some way, to come home. So it's kind of a campaign, but more of a thinking behind the programming that, I don't think coming home is just about physically coming home, but was to use the whole idea that substation as a home of the arts, to invite the community to come home, but to rethink more about the values that we're putting into the art world, because I do think that the art world has changed a lot in the last 30 years. And I don't think we have, I feel that part of that coming home is about participating and forming a dialogue about what we think the art world should be at this point. And I guess at this point, maybe even today's topics, right, is about what happens in a post-pandemic, what is art and culture going to look like, right?
Yeah. We'll come to that in a bit. I guess since we're on that topic, maybe I could ask whether you have any personal memories of the substation. Like, what did you personally reflect when you were coming home?
Right. I think personally, I'm very interested in this idea that the community feels a sense of belonging to the substation. And I think there's always this complaint from the older generation of artists who use the substation about how people used to meet together and hang out and stuff like that. And we're not seeing a lot of that, but also I guess the space around the place making that has happened around in the area has changed dramatically. So I wouldn't know. I think that you would like to see that happen, but it's also something that we know that it is about a certain time as well, I guess. Yeah. But other than that, lots of ghost stories, lots of encounters with different interesting human beings as well. Yeah. So I always feel like, it's just really interesting to bump into different people and just find out their life story. So, and I wonder if that's what the art space is as well.
Okay. Thank you. And sorry, one more question. We're aware, of course, that there's an impending displacement from Armenian Street. So, of course, it might have added like special significance and impetus to this period. Are you able to provide a bit of background for this, for those who are less familiar with the situation?
Oh, okay. Sorry, my dog is barking.
It's okay. It happens.
Right. Okay. So basically, what is happening is that you can hear me, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, she's chiming in. Okay.
Everyone has something to say.
Everyone has something to say about. So basically, what is happening is that in July next year, we're moving out of the substation because they're gonna have a major renovation to the building. So during this time, we are supposed to move out. The organization is supposed to move out and then find a solution to how do we kind of continue without a temporary in this temporary situation. And I think that's for certain. But I think what kind of happens after 2 years after the renovation is something else we will need to figure out, as whether how do we come back to the Armenian Street at the end of 2 years. And that is unclear at this moment. But I do think that that's what coming home is about. It's more than just about coming back to Armenian Street, but really what kind of artwork do we want to see Singapore to have? And
Yeah.
I do think that, it's healthy. It's about building a healthy ecosystem. And
Yeah.
that ecosystem is important, that it should be diverse. It should really have all sorts of art forms, not just one kind of art, whatever that means. One kind looks like maybe biennial kind of art, or I don't know, right? So, but how do we kind of make sense of an ecosystem that's sustainable and maybe a little bit more equitable? I guess that's what we would like to know. And that's and that's a discussion that the community needs to have. And I think that we would like to facilitate that discussion.
That would be wonderful. And then we can come back or come around to Armenia Street to see an artwork that we will all like. Yeah. Thank you. I now on to Seelan. Hi, Seelan.
Hi.
So your art space, Coda Culture, is putting together an exhibition called Precious Things, which opens this Saturday. Everybody, please show up, 2 p.m. Could you tell us a little bit about the project? Because I think your ideas for it had already started before Novel Ways came along. So how did you think that exhibition was relevant to the initiative? And did you have to adapt it or change anything?
I didn't have to change much as far as the show itself went. Although being part of the proposals provided me new ways of thinking about what I was already intending to do. For quite a while, like I've been observing a number of artists that have been working with found objects, and this cuts across various generations. And I found a common thread within in these artists where they found a lot of value in the raw material or the materiality, what was already there. Even before these materials are made into art objects, there was already an innate aesthetic, emotional, intellectual kind of value to these objects and materials. So I was very interested in that, in bringing these artists together in one exhibition. And it was a concept. It was that I had, and then the proposals came along, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity for me to use this opportunity to show this particular exhibition, primarily because the show itself is talking about the value of objects, or the value of the artist, the value of art making. And especially if a lot of these questions are asked of artists and artworks during this period and also after, then this exhibition will become synonymous with what is being asked.
Yeah, and it seems to be something that's kind of linking kind of substations thinking about recovering or reimbuing people, things, institutions, organizations with significance. I think you wanted to show us the visual of the exhibition.
Just so there's a bit of let me see. Oh, but I have to share screen.
Yes.
Okay. Hang on, I can't find a way to show the file directly from the.
Sure.
Anyway, I mean, I can show that later.
You haven't mentioned that a very interesting aspect, which you were talking about earlier before we started the roundtable, about the intergenerational aspects of the show. Could you tell us about that?
I mean, that was intentional right from the start. With many of the group exhibitions that I do, the idea is to bring together artists of various kind of generations and age brackets, looking primarily at the art making, or the artwork, not necessarily at what the status or the seniority or how unknown this particular artist is, or how they work, or where they fall within the art ecosystem, right? So when I can bring together artworks from various different kinds of artists and put it together in a room and kind of do away with a lot of the added labels or the perceived value or significance of these artists. And I can cut away that and not have any barriers in between. A kind of horizontalism is achieved where the viewer kind of enters a space and 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 experiences every work in its innate form, for its innate value, not because of any other external factor or label or expectation. Yeah.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to seeing it on Saturday.
Yeah, and it's also to say that there is a, people may not see it, but there is a thread kind of connecting the various generations of artists, even in a place like Singapore, where you could say the history of modern art is not that long, or art, fine art isn't that as long as other countries. But there is a thread connecting a lot of these artists, and for some of this to be perhaps understood or perceived by the viewer is something that's quite important to me.
Yeah, and like continuing your metaphor of the thread is also that like that fabric that's already been woven in these short decades is actually maybe a lot more complex and denser than people might realize. So maybe to see that at the show. Maybe I can just like pivot a bit from art spaces to museums. Iman, the National Museum launched its Novel Ways project, #NeverBeforeSG, in early October. I think it's a wonderful project. It's, I think, the only purely digital project in the initiative, so it really stands out. Could you tell us about it? What is, and is this the first digital-only exhibition that the National Museum has done?
Yeah, okay, so #NeverBeforeSG is actually the first digital presentation, or rather first digital exhibition that we've ever actually presented. And it is a very interesting exhibition because we've never done it before, and we of course only then understand the certain requirements and the background work to it, and but it seems that it's actually well received, and there's that positive support to it. One of the reasons why we decided to actually go digital is also we wanted to allow our audiences who, our usual visitors to the museum, to actually be able to still enjoy a show still from the National Museum. And at the same time, of course, at the comfort of your own home, your couch, etc., and all that, you still can kind of enjoy the show. And of course, if you notice, if you actually seen the website, in total, there's actually 91 artists, which is, or rather creatives. We didn't want to actually only open it to artists per se. We wanted to address, creativity and the different creatives in Singapore, and especially during like the CB period, when there's really nothing to do. And we realized that people do get creative, and you really have to actually somewhat serve that sanity to actually work around the four walls of your room, for example, and kind of address that in a more creative way. So and it is an amazing outcome, I must say, thanks to, of course, our guest curator, Yang Dorong, who actually managed to actually put together a very interesting lineup. We've got, as I mentioned, 91 artists and 107 artworks in total. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing, and of course, having to really take time to look at the different artworks and creative presentations. It is really something. And of course, for the National Museum, it being the first ever digital presentation, we've learned, especially on my end, we've learned on how to actually manage, all these different challenges as well. Because we're so used to, presenting like physical exhibitions, and we're really good at it, to be honest, right? But of course, this whole digital thing really totally caught us off guard. But of course, it's something that I think being part of this project, I really enjoyed it because for us, being human, there's always things that we learn every day, and this is actually one of them. Personally, for my part.
Oh, I'm
Mm.
really glad to hear that. Yeah. Well, I personally thought it was very clever of National Museum to go fully digital, because I remember back when we were first discussing this, we weren't sure how circuit breaker was going to go. You don't know whether
Exactly.
it was going to be extended, what's going to happen. You open your exhibition, and then people have to stay home again. So it was really clever.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually definitely one of the key considerations that we had, because we didn't know what was going to happen, and of course, it's so indefinite, and uncertain, and we wanted to be sure that, hey, you know what? Let's not let's not risk having maybe a physical presentation, even though we enjoy doing it. We enjoy having visitors to actually come to the museum, not only look at whatever we're presenting. At the same time, we've got our permanent exhibitions as well. But we wanted to see how we can work around that. And at the same time, because again of the platform that we decided to actually utilize, it allows us to actually maybe again to look at different we call that approaches. We've got, if you've been to the website, we've got games, we've got videos, of course, we've got like photography and all that. So we are able to somewhat get together this a very interesting lineup of creators and artists. And I would say this has never been done before. It's cheesy as but I think the title speaks for itself as well.
Yeah. So did you have any favorite projects out of that 107 artworks?
All of them are great. And of course, every single work has its own charm, in which I actually really, really appreciate. And I also appreciate a quick shout out to the different creators involved, because of the commitment that they came about to actually producing the works, and you can actually tell how as they present, or as you see the works online now, you realize how the thought processes that's involved in presenting, and actually of course finalizing the artwork, for example. And I must say that it's a very interesting, strong suite of works, and all of them are great, really. I'm not saying, I'm not being biased, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody go and check it out.
Yes, please.
Never before SG.
Never before the SG. Yes.
Okay. Yep. So 2 of the 9 chapters as part of Never Before SG are live. It's called Life Post COVID, and asks questions about the new normal, which I think is a term that we're all completely sick of, but we can't let go of, because the new normal and the old normal. And I think it's a really great way to think about normalcy and now. So I guess I wanted to ask you and all the panelists, what for you post-COVID means, because we're still in it, right? And it's slightly different from SARS, which feels something like, which also a similar national trauma, but it was a lot more contained, I feel, in a way, whereas we seem to be still living in this kind of like post-COVID world in which. So what do you think this means for you, and what it means for art, for culture, for artists, and your organizations?
But the good thing is that a good and bad thing. I mean, I think we're seeing it in a bit more objective kind of perspective. Actually, COVID-19 actually gave everyone a break. To just it's literally a huge pause button that's been kind of stamped on, and allows you to kind of review and relook at what things should be. Even for example, like arts and culture, and how it can move on in this supposedly new norm. Sorry, 2 fingers. In this new norm, and it also allows us to be a bit more. It challenges us to be a bit more creative. Because sometimes I do feel that we are so used to a certain normalcy that allows us, or it makes us a bit more complacent. But the good thing about being in this position, it kind of triggers you to, hey, I'm kind of presented in this scenario. What do I do next? Like for example, at the museum, we are not able to actually do physical shows, and we are not able to have the visitors come in as much as we want to. We can't have our festivals, etc. We can't do that, but what do we do? So we work around it, and then we try to utilize the different tools that's presented to us. Even like, for example, now we're having this Zoom gathering. Though I must say, the challenge is that there's fatigue to it. Every other meeting is all Zoom and all digital, and the funny thing was that I have this colleague who actually misses physical presence of meetings, which is interesting. So all that is presented, the problems that's presented to us. How do we then kind of address that and move beyond that? And of course, with all this, being equipped with this, should we actually go into another pandemic or similar situation, we are somewhat equipped. We're a bit more ready. At the back of our heads, okay, we've been through this. What can we do then to kind of better the situation? Even in terms of like museum presentations, for example, or even arts and culture and the general landscape. How do we then work around this? The thing about which I also realized having to do this show with The Wrong is that it actually again this whole COVID-19 situation, it puts us in a box, right? It kind of the different constraints that we kind of look through or we actually go through. You'll be surprised with the different ideas that come about. It's to me it's insane because you are only able to come up with something that's so bizarre when you're put in this kind of situation. So I believe that of course creatives and artists they are kind of they are really open to that challenges, and they are really more than ready to actually kind of respond on the fly, which I'm always amazed with the different outcomes and suggestions that they come up with. And of course, having to work with The Wrong, that is one of the key problems that we had. And so how do we then make this, we call that presentation an interesting one? So he said interesting is we're not going for interesting. We're going for something that's able to engage everyone in a we call that in a big way. And of course, and he wanted to also kind of look at the different day-to-day person, your regular Joes who can be creative but are not presented that situation until now. So again, I think that was something that to me was successful in that sense, where it allows us to begin thinking out of the box and push ourselves in terms of in these challenging times.
Okay, thank you. To the rest, what does post-COVID mean to you? Does it mean anything? Or is it too soon to actually use that term?
Wait, I'm just curious. Are we asking June Yap questions?
Yes, we will.
Oh, we will. Oh, okay. she
For me already, or
what?
the questions for the rest of you who have already presented so far?
Well, maybe Jane can start off the ball rolling with that the question that Lucas.
Yeah, what does post-COVID look like to you?
Do you want me to tell you about our show?
Yes, you can.
Don't make us nervous, Don't make us nervous. Stick to the script.
Let me share a bit of the show that. Is that a good time for this?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Sam Singapore Museum has organized an exhibition, and our exhibition is actually presented in National Gallery. This is due to our building undergoing a redevelopment right now. And so, like National Museum Singapore, we have worked with an independent curator, Samantha Yap, and the exhibition is titled Time Passes. So Time Passes actually refers to a book by the English modernist writer, Virginia Woolf, who published To the Lighthouse, which is the book in reference, in 1927. And Woolf herself is very much known for her non-linear kind of approaches to narrative. So Time Passes refers to the middle chapter, actually, of To the Lighthouse. And in this chapter, it really looks at the empty house, a time of hiatus, and where the house cleaning occurs prior to the return of its residents. So on the one hand, you have this idea of a leap in time, of time feeling fast and slow. And I think some of us might say that of this period of time of circuit breaker, that on the one hand, it seems like time is passing so slowly. We are surprised by how there's so much we want to do, and that each day kind of plods along, and there seems to be certain stagnation. But at the same time, time has passed so quickly. We can't believe that it's been so many months that we've been doing this, right? Telecommuting and speaking online. And then the chapter Time Passes also then speaks to a period in between, which between the past and the future. So effectively, that is the now. And I think that's something that we are very much, that the exhibition focused on as a means to expand a space to consider what had come before and what one might hope to have after that. So the exhibition then, the experience of the exhibition then is really intended to take off from this setting, from Time Passes, and transform it into a physical encounter of the chapter and its subjects via the artist's work. So you have in the exhibition, for example, the invocation of sentiment and maybe a kind of sentimentality of home in Victor Tun's frameworks. And then you also have the delicate kind of care employed to produce the work of Ashley Yeoh. So the subject of return then is one which has a certain amount of optimistic hope, which you might say is characteristic also of the circuit breaker period, and therefore this is really something quite close to our heart. And this is expressed then, these ideas are then expressed in a variety of ways that extend from the artist's practice and interest. So the exhibition then can be read as recognizing that moment of pause, which has been mentioned already, and also the possibilities of the new and emerging, which I think is the question which we all end up with right now, right? Which is what happens post-COVID. So let me move to that. I think
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So moving to post-COVID, so something that I've been interested in through this entire time is really kind of the stages of the pandemic. I don't know if you've also observed that your own individual state of mind, the way in which we react to the situation has changed since March, right? Where we began with a lot of initial uncertainties. There was a loss of our routines, and that was in many ways devastating. And then after the arrival of new habits and routines, and now here we are, right, speaking about the impact of it in a somewhat more reflective sort of way. And so for the museum, this is actually on the one hand a moment for us to think about what the museum as an institution can be or can do in the future. Because the museum is obviously an historical edifice, but for Sam, then it's a question about how can it be relevant to the present, and these are things that we are thinking about, but we have also been thinking about prior to COVID because of our redevelopment. So in a way, our redevelopment has been that disruption already, has been an opportunity to reflect. But what we're finding with this situation right now and with COVID is really thinking a lot further, and what we are projecting post-COVID then is for Sam to really be able to be relevant to the present, to the concerns of the time, and also at a curatorial level, we're thinking about what it means to function alongside Sam's constituents. And what I mean by Sam's constituents, this really spans, our artists, our publics, our artistic communities, and our museum, organizational peers, and all the agencies around us. So really, thinking about what it means for us to be working alongside all of these.
Thank you. So you're talking about emerging artists earlier, or like things that are emerging. So a lot of the artists in Time Passes are quite young, I think. Was it like a deliberate choice?
So our interest then was to go beyond obviously our institutional curators, just as NMS has done, and the opportunity then was there for us to appoint Samantha. And Samantha is a young curator, and that was very deliberate. And we expected then her selection of artists would also be artists that are in her circles and also in her view, and therefore be pretty young emerging artists, which then aligns to Sam's interest in emerging practices and also present-day experimenting.
Okay.
Mm.
And how is this different, if at all, from the way you've done the Sam has done the Singapore Biennale? Because I mean, you've had external curators before, right? So what is so different with Samantha?
Yeah, no, well, it's not so different in the sense that as with external curators for Singapore Biennale, with Samantha, we take her into our institutional
Embrace.
and we kind of we provide her with the support, but then also she gets this rapid orientation and kind of dives into the deep end of exhibition making along with our team. So it's very much embedded within the institution itself, and we hope this has been interesting for her and that there's some value in it for her and for other curators that we work with. I think in the case of Samantha, she, however, had a much shorter timeline to work with than other external curators we worked with before. But we are very pleased that she agreed to come on board, and she was very enthusiastic, and she really, just dove into all of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
We appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Tian, you have in your project some external curators, right? And I guess cultural organizers. Are you able to share on some of the projects that they're doing, like with Cui?
Yeah. So actually we invited Cui, who is, and maybe the proposition is quite simple. We sent her a very brief, open kind of idea that she could respond to, and so what she responded to was perhaps. So I think with the budget, she wanted to sort of build a directory of cultural producers as part of the Culturals SG kind of website extension. So I mean, maybe in a most practical way, that's really something that wouldn't have come about, because you do need that time and the effort and the resources to address fundamental issues, which I think maybe Sealand and a lot of the more independent producers or people who are working independently would actually also probably attest to that idea that actually, as an independent producer, there's really not much opportunities for you to sort of work or develop something in a more in a way. So I thought that was something quite meaningful that she wanted to sort of bring together. So a more concrete directory of people who are interested in producing in Singapore, because I do think that we have a lot of platforms for artists to show art, but then there are other parts of the ecosystem that probably needs a lot of addressing actually at this point of time. Yeah.
If I could come back to Sealand, since you were talking about like the difficulty for like more independent artist-led spaces. So of course we know that in the pandemic conditions, there's like precarity that artists and independent cultural workers experience. It's really kind of like worsened by the pandemic. And I was wondering whether Sealand could tell us whether this is of a special concern to you, and what your perspective as someone who runs an artist-led space, an independent space like horticulture.
Yeah, I think there is for me, I'm more concerned about young artists who just graduated from school or who are still in school, because for them, they took a decision to go and study art, and which is already in a place like Singapore, perhaps a kind of difficult decision, and then to be accountable to your parents or whoever paid for your education, when you graduate, and you're thrown into a situation where, it's a question mark, right? How you're going to survive, or how you're going to navigate the world now and beyond, right? I think the concern is more about them. And then when it comes to the arts as a kind of wider scope, I think I'm actually more concerned about the performing arts, because even in the visual arts, we've been allowed to operate We can put images on walls, people can come and see them. We can put images online, people can see them. But when it comes to performing arts, it's been the most difficult for them, and I think there's more concern for me personally about how they're going to navigate it right now. Even the more established ones, there's definitely a kind of lethargy amongst viewers. This is something I've heard about watching plays or recitals online. So I think more attention needs to be paid there, even if there are things that we who don't operate in those fields who can try and provide opportunities there would also be good. Yeah, but as far as what I think about art making before, now, and beyond, it doesn't change, and that is kind of exemplified by the exhibition that I'm putting on. The fact that these artists were already working with materials that exist in the world and finding a purpose. This is the.
Can everyone see it? I'm sharing it on your behalf. How do I make it full screen?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the fact that these artists were already working with found materials, very often materials and objects that we would ignore or consider discarded, but then to find value in it and then to make art, it's kind of reminiscent of making art from the environment, things that you find not just made into objects and put into a gallery, but art that is made in the environment itself and left there to deteriorate without the need for a mediator, without the need for the market or the institution or any galleries to be a mediator. The kind of essence of art making is something that should have existed and should continue to exist, no matter what happens to the world or economic systems. Because if you stop making art when you don't get an artist fee, then you are not a true artist to begin with, in my view. And whether or not the world collapses around you in whatever way, the fact that you are an artist looking at your environment, responding to it now and here, that should not change if you were committed to making art for the rest of your life. And that is really, it's not just what I'm saying. The exhibition itself and the works in it are meant to kind of exemplify that. Yes.
Here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Oops. Okay, and I'm back. So I think we will open up to questions very soon. I guess I have one more I wanted to ask. This is also related to what we were just discussing. The precarity of artists' income isn't new, right? All along, we know that many artists have day jobs to support their practices. These may be part-time jobs or adjunct positions with inadequate income security, and and we know that wealth, job security, and social security has like a direct bearing on the degree to which we all feel the impact of the pandemic. And like how never before, as she talked about it when they talked about living conditions of migrant workers in Singapore, even before the crisis. Oh wow. Okay, and this long preamble, I guess.
She agrees.
Yeah. I like it when people agree. So it's to ask what you think then, and this is to everyone, what we really think art and culture can do to address social inequalities and structural inequities. This is not limited to Singapore, so you can feel free to respond to any level of context, whether it's to reference what's happening in the States or anywhere. Yeah. It's a very leading question.
I guess raise hand.
Yay, thank you.
Now, I guess the thing is that the good thing about arts and culture in general is that it's always a tool of expression, and it is actually it helps to be the voice, of certain concerns and all. Because if it's a formal setting, you are not able to voice out, that concerns. But I think the good thing about again, art being a tool and of expression and all, you are able to share, be it, the different movements, etc., and all that, which I do personally feel that's, again, very important, because otherwise you won't be noticed nor heard. And there are different, that concerns has been raised through the years, inequality, be it, gender, etc., and all that. Even in Singapore itself, though challenging, but there are, I know creators and artists who actually raise it through their works, etc., and all. Which I think it will never end, as long as there's art or creative people. That tool will always be powerful enough to allow a voice to be heard.
And so long as the world is unjust.
Yes.
Any other thoughts from the rest?
I was just wondering that, I think during the circuit breaker, I was reading up a lot about art in very, very difficult times and what it looked like. And I think we do have a few examples in our national collection as well, right? So I guess maybe, there's many pandemics before. Just maybe taking the, not SARS. SARS wasn't as, on at this point, doesn't look as crazy, right? But 1918, the Spanish flu was 2 years, right? So two extreme. It lasted 2 years, and it kind of really revealed. Because it was also part of a globalization network where. So one of the things that sort of really is really strange now is that it doesn't look like the end of the world. So that was kind of, I think I was talking to Sabah and would say that, wow, this thing doesn't look like the end of the world. We can still go NTUC and buy groceries and all these things, right? So it doesn't look that bad, but actually everything about the way we're going to act in this world is changing. It's really, really changing, right? So maybe one of the things we have to accept is that we can't make art the way it should be made anymore. Maybe we shouldn't travel as much to biennials and all these things that's really bad for the world in the first place should really be changed. So I do feel that maybe what we can do as part of the arts community with the rest of the society is to really start thinking about how we can participate, and participate and demand our right to shape the world we live in. So I think that's important I feel at this point is to constantly keep a dialogue about what we're questioning and sharing that with each other to sort of start to make sense of it. I don't think we have an answer. I think in general, we don't know how this will pan out. It's not even 1 year and I'm getting so lonely, like not meeting enough people, right? It's really difficult. The social element is so difficult. Yeah, I miss seeing everybody. So maybe Zoom is the next best thing. Yeah.
Maybe let me add from what Tian has said, and in relation to, from the museum perspective on structures and stuff, because the museum is a structure, right? It historically and also in terms of its relationship to art making and art circulation and all. And I think perhaps where it comes to inequalities and such is really for museums, and I think for Sam also to think about what it means its own structures, the impact of its own structures, and to examine this and to see where there are areas which can be improved, where there are areas that can be further opened up, where the conversation can happen. So that I think from a museum perspective, that's what can happen and should happen. Right, because a museum needs to be relevant, and if what is relevant right now is for us to figure out how to connect, as Tian says, so not feel so lonely, and also to respond to a larger situation, a global situation, the issues that we're facing as a collective, then those are the structures that then need to be addressed, and we need to collectively look at these things.
I think that's fantastic. Let's do that. Let's do that together. We gather at the substation to talk about how we might go forward. So we have a question actually that's from that is being asked, and it's maybe Tian already touched a little bit upon it. It's that the pandemic is very closely linked to climate change. So how has the art world exacerbated climate change, and how can we do things differently? Any takers? I mean, Tian already talked, maybe we should fly less to attend biennials around the world, but there are other aspects to this, you know?
I think when it comes to climate change, I mean, and this is, well, maybe you have personal kind of position on it, and it's something that one needs to learn about, you know. One needs to go out there and look for the information and try and understand it better. The thing is, climate change, it's affected by a lot of things that we do. And so it's integrated in all aspects of our life. And I think if we want to change, that is going to require from us effort. I think that's the most important part right now, not just superficial sorts of changes, you know, which make us feel better, but if we truly feel that this is important right now, then there's fundamental things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading an article by this writer, Iliana Pokianaki, and she was talking about how, I feel like something that connects what all of us are talking about is the idea of care, like how we need to start looking as to what needs repairing, what needs to change. And in this article on care, she was talking about how the things that we know about environment sustainability are already there. We already know what we need to do. So now's the time to just do it, you know, and it's enough talking, enough asking questions. Let's just get to it. Yeah, that would be great if we can do that. Do we have time for one more question? Yes. The pandemic has asymmetrically affected communities, for example, affecting the vulnerable and elderly more heavily. So has the pandemic affected particular sections of the art community more than others? And how can we alleviate that? So I guess maybe this goes back to something that Seelan already talked about, that the performing art sector, you know, have maybe in much more dire straits. And can we think about how the visual art world, if we can cut it so neatly, you know, can play a role in that? Is it that we all need to just start working more cross-disciplinarily, you know, and all the productions that the performing arts sector does takes time, you know, years to plan. Is it as easy as something that we can just come in on to stage, you know, to provide a venue?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I said that we should find ways to see if there's anything we can do, I still think that any initiative or effort should be organic and should not be forced. You know, it shouldn't be that, you know, we should be responsive but not reactionary. You know, just because we think this is a problem, that means we have to force something to happen that way. For example, the moment things were announced, like everything was going to lock down, and all around the world, right? There's this push for like digital presentation, and then everybody was, in my view, almost going overboard with the digital presentations. You know, some of these online exhibitions looked like flash websites from 2003, and what's the value in putting on an online exhibition when you can just scroll through an Instagram feed and see all those images instead of walking through a 3D space that in fact it's slower than scrolling through a feed. So this is what I mean by being responsive and not reactionary. And if we're thinking about how to help other sectors of the arts community, it should be done on their terms, not ours. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
But what do you think? Actually, I mentioned about like art in extreme times, right? So, I mean, if you really think that, like, let's say Guernica, for example. Guernica was a painting by Picasso that was made on hindsight. So it has a critical historical distance. But I mean, my question was that, I mean, I was really curious as then what is possible within that extreme climate, right? And usually not much because it's so extreme. There's not enough pain, or maybe it's really, it's something very different. So I mean, maybe it's also addressing a very long art historical inquiry that I'm always very interested in. That how do you kind of value something that is beyond what it looks like, and and we might also have to sort of be able to look at something differently for how it is done. So maybe, yeah, I do agree that a lot of people, we are all very tired of the digital thing, and we miss the physical. But what if this thing lasts for 2 years, right? I mean, if the
more.
special or more, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, we are still not able to grasp what this is. But yet every rule seems to be changing all the time. I do think that maybe we can also, I mean, that's maybe the question is that, I guess sometimes when we're doing something, it's not about the thing that we're doing, but it's also about gaining some kind of control over something that is uncontrollable in our life. So and sometimes, right, if you tell, like, dad, please don't, or some elderly in the family, don't go downstairs and buy stuff during the circuit breaker, but they still want to. It's really their way of actually making sense of their life. So, which is something interesting that I was just thinking about, and maybe also what's opening at a coder culture this weekend, right? That actually the artists are still doing something, no matter what kind of situation. But the question is, I guess the museums decide what is important at the end of the day. And the question is, how broad are we opening the spectrum of what it is, and the terms and conditions, or maybe just the way that we see things, is that going to change with time? Because you don't see that, I mean, because this draws back to the last point, right? That extreme situation, extreme art done in extreme situations seems to be always, those that are highlighted are those that are done on hindsight, when you have the luxury of time and resources, not during the extreme period. I think it's very rare that you get something, I cannot remember, but June, do you remember this painting that was done by one of the artists from Myanmar, but it was in political prison? I forgot his name.
Was it Sanmin?
Lin.
Yeah. And when you look at that, you really cannot see where that is. But just how extreme that situation it is for him to even make that, right? I think that's something interesting for me. In a sense, there's no real answer lah. I think it's hard for us to see now. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess everyone's doing something.
We try.
We try. Okay lah. Well,
not to end on such a somber note, things are actually a lot more hopeful than that, I hope. But this is all the time we have for today. So thank you very much to our speakers, Tian, Iman, Silan,
thank you so much,
and June.
everyone.
A big thank you also to our audiences for joining us from home, office, or on the go. So for more information on exhibitions programs that our speakers have been working on, please go to novelwaysofbeing.sg. And finally, we would appreciate it if you could take 30 seconds to leave your feedback on today's program by scanning the QR code that will be appearing on screen after this. We would love to hear from you. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye, Tian. Bye, June.
Bye.